21st century, Bill Gates was the wealthiest man in the world. But because of his penchant for charity and philanthropy, his net worth has recently sunk to $96.4 billion, and he was surpassed by Jeff Bezos as the richest man in the world. Gates once said, "Money has no utility to me beyond a certain point. Its utility is entirely in building an organization and getting the resources out to the poorest in the world." But even though the businessman and computer scientist has given away 27% of his fortune over his lifetime, he can't help but enjoy some pretty opulent amenities. Since dropping out of Harvard and founding Microsoft, Bill Gates became the world's youngest billionaire at 31 years old and has maintained a behemoth fortune ever since. From private jets to fancy homes and swimming pools, we are counting down the top 10 craziest things Bill Gates owns. Before we even look at how Bill Gates stocks his mansions, let's look at the houses themselves. Gates has exactly the kind of real estate portfolio you would expect from a billionaire. From a Washington mansion worth $123 million to multiple horse ranches across the U.S., Gates spends most of his time at his 66,000 square foot mansion in Medina, Washington. It took Gates 7 years and $63 million to build this behemoth of a house, which is filled with lots of high-tech features. He purchased the lot for $2 million in 1988, but is now worth an estimated $123 million. On top of this, in October 2014, Gates purchased the 228-acre Rancho Paciena for $18 million. The property includes a racetrack, guest house, office, veterinarian suite, orchard, and 5 barns. There's a 3/4-mile dirt racetrack on the property, located in Rancho Santa Fe, California. Those buildings are filled with equestrian decor. Weight loss tycoon Jenny Craig previously owned the property before selling it to Gates. Gates also owns another horse farm in Wellington, Florida, which he purchased for $8.7 million in 2013. The family's daughter Jennifer is an avid equestrian, and they had previously rented the house when in Florida for her competitions. In 2009, though, Gates reportedly purchased a Wyoming ranch that once belonged to Buffalo Bill Cody. Though the price he paid for the 492-acre property was never reported, it was originally listed for $8.9 million. Beyond these properties, he owns many more properties through his Cascade private investment firm, including Charles Hotel in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and half of the Four Seasons Hotels chain. In 2013, Gates and several unnamed buyers paid $161 million for the Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco. The hotel is now worth $200 million, the Wall Street Journal says. Next, let's look at the crown jewel of Gates' property portfolio, Xanadu 2.0. It shouldn't be too surprising that one of the wealthiest people in the world also has an insanely extravagant home. It took Gates 7 years and $63 million to build his Medina, Washington estate, named Xanadu 2.0 after the fictional home of Citizen Kane's Charles Foster Kane. At 66,000 square feet, the home is absolutely massive, and it's filled with high-tech details. He reportedly pays around $1 million in property taxes each year. To give you an idea of the scale, 500,000 board feet of lumber was needed to complete the project. The house was built with 500-year-old Douglas fir trees. 300 construction workers labored on the home, 100 of whom were electricians. The house uses its natural surroundings to reduce heat loss. Xanadu 2.0 is an earth-sheltered house, meaning that it's built into its surroundings to regulate temperature more efficiently. In addition, an enormous reception hall could accommodate up to 200 guests. The 2,300-square-foot hall could seat up to 150 people for a dinner party, or 200 people standing up at a cocktail event. A 6-foot-wide limestone fireplace dominates one wall, while another wall has a 22-foot-wide video screen. The house has 24 bathrooms, 10 of which are full baths, and there are 6 kitchens. The home theater can accommodate 20 guests in plush seats. It's designed in an Art Deco style, with comfortable armchairs, couches, and even a popcorn machine for snacking. An existing home was removed by barge to make room for a separate activities building. The 900-square-foot building sits next to Gates' sport court, putting green, and boat docks. Altogether, Gates' garages can accommodate up to 23 cars. There are several different garages located at different points around the property. The most interesting one, however, is an underground cave made out of concrete and stainless steel. That garage alone can park 10 cars. Some of the concrete was purposely broken to give it a rough, deconstructivist look. And just to put this amazing home in perspective, one Microsoft employee paid $35,000 just for a private tour of the facility. Now that we know about the host of properties that Gates owns, let's look at how he outfits them to match the lavish lifestyles of a billionaire. As part of his massive Washington estate, Gates has an elaborate series of pools. They begin with a gentle waterfall and a natural lagoon that cascade into a 60-foot pool. There's a 3,900-square-foot building just to hold this particular pool. And as if this wasn't crazy enough, people in the pool could swim underneath a glass wall and come up to a terrace area on the outside. There's also a locker room with 4 showers and 2 baths and includes a fossil motif floor. The pool is also equipped with a state-of-the-art underwater music system so that guests never need to take a break from their favorite tunes, even as they swim. This is an extension of Gates' guest preferences system. When a guest arrives, they're given a pin that interacts with sensors in each room in the house. Depending on their preferences, the temperature, music, and lighting will change in the house. Each room comes with its own touchpad to control the room environment. All this is of course in line with current smart home trends, so it wouldn't be a huge deal, except that Gates has had all this in 1995. Of the $60 million that went into building his home, this preferences system certainly took up a huge percentage. One of the more interesting features of this house is the flat panel displays behind picture frames that respond to the pin each guest wears to provide art that is consistent with their interests. The artwork on walls can be changed with just the touch of a button. Situated around the house are $80,000 worth of computer screens. Anyone can make the screens display their favorite paintings or photographs, which are stored on devices worth $150,000. Guests are asked to input their favorite artists and styles when they enter the house, but if they're running short on time, it's possible to find art they would enjoy based on more general demographics like age, gender, and level of education. But Gates doesn't only own digital artwork. He set what was then an American art record when he bought Winslow Homer's Lost on the Grand Banks for $36 million in 1998. The painting hangs on a wall outside his home library. Inside his library is Childe Hassam's Room of Flowers, a piece that's believed to be worth $20 million. He also owns a painting by George Bellows called Polo Crowd. Gates bought the piece anonymously at a Sotheby's auction in 1999, paying a whopping $27.5 million to add it to his collection. Gates also owns William Merritt Chase's The Nursery, worth $10 million. He also paid $30.8 million for Codex Leicester, a scientific journal handwritten and illustrated by Leonardo da Vinci. With all this fine art, Gates' home could be a museum, though they only entertain guests from time to time. In a recent interview with Ellen DeGeneres, Gates revealed that he had only felt he'd made 2 extravagant purchases since becoming a billionaire. His most extravagant by far was a private jet. Gates had previously referred to his private jet as a guilty pleasure and big splurge. It's been widely reported that he owns a Bombardier BD700 Global Express with seating for up to 19 people and a $40 million price tag. The Global is the business jet with the second largest cabin after the Gulfstream G650. It can accommodate 12 to 16 passengers in 3 cabin sections, mostly a forward 4-chair club section, a central 4-seat conference grouping, and an aft 3-place divan facing 2 chairs. Most have a forward galley, crew rest chair, and crew lavatory. A variation on this vehicle is used by militaries all over the world, and many consider it to be one of the most luxurious private jets on the market. The only other item that Bill Gates considers a luxury purchase is his Porsche that he bought soon after becoming a billionaire. Bill Gates' Porsche 959 in silver is one rare beauty. Gates first purchased a Porsche 911 Turbo in 1979, and rumor has it that he was pulled over quite a few times in the blue sports car. Porsche even officially changed the name of the car to the Gates 959. The Porsche 959 was the most impressive car to come out of the German automaker's doors, and quite possibly the greatest car of the 80s. This twin-turbo supercar came equipped with a 6-speed manual transmission instead of the normal 5-speed. It was capable of completing a 0 to 60 run in just 3 seconds and hit upwards of 195 miles per hour for its top speed. Not only for a car released in 1986, but also for cars released nowadays. It's no wonder Gates had such an affinity for this car. The 959 cost $250,000 when it first came on the market, but because Gates' model is now a collector's item, experts estimate it could be worth as much as $10 million to the right buyer. Those familiar with Gates' habits know that he is a voracious reader. He has a stunning library to match. The 2,100 square foot library has a dome roof and 2 secret bookcases, including one that reveals a hidden bar. On the ceiling, you'll find a quote from The Great Gatsby that reads, "He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it." The library is also home to the Codex Leicester, a 16th century Leonardo da Vinci manuscript that Gates bought at auction for $30.8 million in 1994. This is the single most expensive piece in the library, but there are many other rare books, meaning the total value is likely well over $60 million. Though his personal library is off limits except for distinguished guests, literacy is hugely important to Gates, and through his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he created the Global Libraries nonprofit to invest in public libraries in more than 50 countries and ensure that children and adults have access to free reading materials. Bill Gates loves his daughters and indulged them one wish when they were growing up. Imagine their delight when he revealed that they had an entire room dedicated to trampolines. Much like an indoor gymnastics facility, the girls could jump and play at any time of the day or night. The kids like that. I recommend it. It's a room with a very high ceiling, Gates told Ellen DeGeneres. And keep in mind that this is only a tiny fraction of the family's total exercise space. The exercise facilities total 2,500 square feet and also include a sauna, steam room, and separate men's and women's locker rooms. This is all in addition to a large series of basketball and tennis courts, and of course Bill Gates' legendary pool. Sounds like a pretty delightful home to grow up in. Gates lost his anonymity long ago, so it's difficult for him to get far away from his fame and fortune. In order to get away, he had a stream and beach installed on his property. The stream and wetland estuary were created to solve any problems with runoff that the property's large walls might have created. The water is kept stocked with salmon and sea-run cutthroat trout. He also has a miles-long beachfront installed on his property, with sand imported from the Caribbean. The lakefront shore contains sand that's delivered in large quantities by a barge from St. Lucia each year. Contractors estimate that the initial shipment must have cost at least $2 million, while subsequent shipments probably cost around $500,000. Although the water is much too frigid to swim in Washington, Gates enjoys a long walk on the beach with authentic white sand. And perhaps the most extravagant thing Gates owns is a private wealth fund. Though much of his finances are still tied up in Microsoft, he started a wealth fund with the intention of protecting the environment. Breakthrough Energy aims to invest $1 billion into radical energy startups capable of drastically cutting global emissions. The fund draws on the resources of billionaires like India's Mukesh Ambani, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, Virgin's Richard Branson, Alibaba's Jack Ma, and SoftBank's Masayoshi Son. This is in line with his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, through which he has pledged to give away the entirety of his fortune within his lifetime. The foundation has already given away $30 billion over the last few decades. Most of the